This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network.
Hi, this is Don Biggs from the 92-93 Binghamton Rangers.
Hi, this is Brandon Buchinski.
This is Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
Hi, I'm Corey Cowick, left wing for the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to Bob Howard on the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for April 13th, 2023. This is episode 378, but in season 12, this is episode number 5. Welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you here and aboard, and looking forward to what I think is going to be a great show. I have a great sit-down interview with the Director of Communications and Broadcasting for the Adirondack Thunder, Binghamton Zone, Rob Lippolis. Obviously, Rob was the broadcaster with the Binghamton Devils. He worked for the Binghamton Senators in the final season of the Binghamton Senators as the Director of Media and Communications. He then was the first-year broadcaster and director of media for the Binghamton Black Bears as well. He's up there with Adirondack, and we wish him a lot of well. And he's been a good friend of this show since 2011 when he started doing some of the intros and the extras that you hear periodically with the show. And we're going to record some new stuff and get some new stuff laid out for the Power Play Post Show, which is very cool. So I'm glad to have him on. He and I talked for like 2 hours. You guys are going to be privy to about 55 minutes of that. But Rob and I have a lot of things in common and a lot of things that we could talk about and everything, which was really great. So I'm really looking forward to everybody getting to hear that interview with Rob. He's a great kid. One of the things I will say about Rob and his family, there's two things. Evan was a intern with the Binghamton Senators after Rob was off, I think either at the time probably in Oswego in college, and his brother Evan was an intern. And what a great kid. Loved Evan to death. He was awesome. Anything that we needed as media, Evan got for us, which was very cool. So, and another thing I want to mention is that there was a time when we put some stuff up on Craigslist, and Evan and Rob's father came over to the house to buy some insulation that we had that we weren't using, that we sold, and we had no idea that it was actually Rob and Evan's father until I think I talked to Evan, or it was probably Rob that I was talking to about it and everything. So great family, Lippolis family, youth hockey. They love the Binghamton hockey here, and they've done a lot of great things here in Binghamton for that. So let's get to the meat of the matter before we get to the interview with Rob Lippolis, which I'm really excited about everybody hearing. First, the Black Bears win both games in the home and home series versus the Delaware Thunder. Friday night at home versus the Delaware, they won 11-1. Crazy night of goal scoring. It was Hall of Fame night, which saw Josh Hennessy of the B-Sense, Patrice Robitaille of the Icemen, and the late, great Charlie Jaws Jaworski of the Press being inducted into the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame. That was supposed to happen in 2020, and it's happening now, and it happened in 2023, the actual induction ceremony. So very happy for all those guys. Josh was a really great guy. I talked to him a couple times during the Senators' years. Really nice guy. Never got to meet Patrice Robitaille. I know he's in the area, and maybe he's somebody I should reach out to get him on the Power Play Post Show to talk about the Iceman years and his time with the Iceman in the UHL. And then, of course, if you do any research like I do on newspapers.com, you will see a ton of stuff in the early days of Charlie Jaworski. He was a phenomenal writer. He was a blue-collar kind of just hard-working beat writer, and he did a great job, built up a great sports department in Binghamton. And you know what? It's a dishonor and a disgrace to what Charlie did, which is what the Binghamton Press has become when it comes to the sports and the amount of sports that they cover, and it's really unfortunate, and they should be ashamed of themselves. But, I guess that's what you get when a big company like Gannett owns them. But moving on, the Black Bears scored double digits goals for the third time this season. That's right. Now they still got 2 more games left to go against Elmira, home and home with Elmira. But up to this point, they've now won 2 games, or 3 games with double digit scores. Tonight, or actually Saturday night, Friday night, it was against Delaware. They won 11-1. First game of the season this year, they beat Elmira 10-1, and then January 6th versus Port Huron, they won by the score of 13-2. So those are 3 pretty monumental games in a season for a team. So pretty cool numbers there. Shots on goal for the Black Bears was 76 in the game. And I bring this up because they surpassed the last weekend's 73 shots on goal they put on Elmira. And then they were only 2 away from tying the Black Bears all-time shots in one game. So that's pretty cool as well. Tyler Jurich, obviously big news in this game, broke the FPHL's all-time scoring record with his 296th and 297th goal of his career and 29th and 30th of the season for him this year. Congratulations to Tyler. I know there's some controversy about who had what goals. Was he tied? Was he not tied? To be honest, I don't want to get really involved in that. Listen, he scored his 29th and his 30th goals of the season for the Black Bears, which is very important, and he broke the record. Either way, he's got the record at 297. That's really all that matters. And then he had a well-deserved night off on Saturday. Chad Lopez had a hat trick in the game, also had 3 assists. This was also his second hat trick of his career. Both were versus the Delaware Thunder. Not probably a stat that the Delaware Thunder fans want to hear. The Black Bears rolled with 5 defensemen and 11 forwards for Friday night's game. Simply put, the Black Bears dominated this game. This is really true. All 3 periods and all facets of the game, they dominated in it. Taylor Joseph has now started in the last 4 games. Actually, it was 5 by Saturday, but 4 at this point, and he won his last 3, which I think is the key here. Going into the playoffs, you really want a goaltender that you can rely on, that's in a groove, that's hot, and Taylor Joseph is that goaltender right now. He's also bringing some spiritual support to the games and to the team, and I think that's very, very cool and very important as well. I won't delve too far into that and everything because it is about spirituality, and everybody probably does that their own way. But either way, Taylor Joseph is doing a phenomenal job for the Black Bears at the moment. The Black Bears are now 9-0 versus the Thunder. And they had 1 more game to go. Let's talk about that game because they made it 10-0, right? Goal scorers in the 8-5 win against the Thunder in Delaware were Justin Semero with 2, Gavin Yates with 2, Donald Oliveri with 2. Connor Smith and Josh Newberg both scored, and Newberg scored the team's 9th shorthanded goal of the season. So a very good outing by our offense. Maybe the defense struggled just a little bit. Taylor Joseph gave up 4 goals. But the end of the season series with Delaware winning all 10 games in regulation. That's pretty impressive and everything. But we know that the Delaware Thunder have struggled this season. Donald Oliveri played in this game. He needs to play in the next 2 games if he wants to be eligible for the playoffs. He scored 2 power play goals. I'll tell you right now, in the playoffs, if Donald Oliveri is on this team, and you're a team, I don't care if you're Danbury, I don't care if you're Columbus, Carolina, Port Huron, I don't care who you are. If Donald Oliveri is on the ice and you guys give up a penalty, he's going to make you pay. He's really good on the power play. Very good. He's a very good puck-moving defenseman and plays a lot of forward for the team. But when he's on the power play, he is deadly. Connor Smith, at this point, has scored 4 goals in his first 4 games as a pro. Very key there. Taylor Joseph played the first 2 periods. I know Gary Ryan brought it up. I brought it up. I don't believe there was anything that Taylor Joseph did wrong. He gave up 4 goals, but Jeremy Forget came in for the third period. More than likely, this was to give Forget some playing time and Joseph a well-deserved 20 minutes off. And I expect probably either Riley McVeigh or Forget to probably start one of the other 2 games, and then you give Taylor Joseph also a game as well. And the reason why is you want to keep Taylor Joseph in game shape, game mode, because I really think he's going to be our goalie going into the playoffs. In the third period, with the Black Bears only up by 1 goal, they killed 4 minutes of a Thunder power play before Gavin Yates scored to take a 2-goal lead. I thought that was really key. It was a double minor, and they stopped the whole thing. And then almost like 30 or 40 seconds later, Gavin Yates scored to take a 2-goal lead. Really, that was a key in this game. Really, really, really important penalty kill that they had. The game did have a back and forth feel, I believed, a little bit more so than in Binghamton. In Binghamton, it was all Binghamton all night long. I think they had 22 shots on goal in the first game on Friday night, and then it was a lot more back and forth. Both teams were a little bit more frisky with the rough stuff, right? So, but obviously the Black Bears still offensively are just better than some teams. They just really are. It doesn't matter almost having 5 defensemen out there. It didn't really matter all that much. The Black Bears have now won 4 in a row and have an 8-1 record versus Elmira, who they play their final 2 games of the regular season against next weekend, or this weekend coming up. In my opinion, the Black Bears have beaten the teams they should beat. And this is true. They've beaten Watertown. They've beaten Elmira. They've beaten Delaware. Those are the teams they should be beating because they're just stacked up a little bit better than these other teams. The final 2 games of the season are versus the Elmira Mammoth. Binghamton is 9-1 versus the Mammoth on the season. They play a weird schedule of 11 games, but they also play only 3 games against other teams. So just the way it is. They have scored 51 goals against the Elmira Mammoth in the 10 games they played against them. And the Mammoth have only scored 21 goals. I do not expect much to change. However, MJ Merkel and Gino D'Angelo play for the Mammoth, and both are Binghamton natives, and they will come back, and I think they're going to try to put on a good show for their fans, their friends, their family that might be at the game in Binghamton. So that's what we got coming up this weekend. The Binghamton Black Bears versus the Elmira Mammoth. Friday night in Elmira, Saturday night in Binghamton. Those are the final 2 games of the regular season. We should know soon, hopefully, who we're playing against. We know that it's going to be the Friday and the Saturday and the Sunday. Binghamton will be on the road on Friday. I still think it's going to be Watertown because I think we're going to take care of business against Elmira this upcoming weekend. So I think it'll be against Watertown, which is fine. They're a little bit better of a team. I actually like the fact that we'd be playing a team that I think is a little bit better structured and playing a little bit better than Elmira, even though Watertown still struggled. I mean, they're still not like they were last year. But I think they're a little bit better than Elmira and Delaware, so I think it'll be a good test for the Binghamton Black Bears. Okay. So the FPHL officially announced Baton Rouge to be a part of the FPHL. Baton Rouge has signed a 3-year lease deal. The team name will come with a fan vote. That'll be happening probably within the next month or 2 because obviously they need to find out what they're going to call themselves and then go start doing all the marketing because marketing is very key. They did play 3 games in Baton Rouge in this last year, I think. And they went well. So we'll see how that goes. They used to have ECHL there. I believe they had a CHL team there at one point. It's tough to sell hockey in the South. Deep South like that, it's very difficult. But with Mississippi, Carolina, Columbus, I think you can build a crew, a group of Southern teams. So that'll be very interesting to see how that works out, but Baton Rouge should be a part of the FPHL for the next 3 years, at least at this point. This is what we know. I did want to give some quick thoughts on the Chicago Wolves possibly going independent. news broke over the last week and a half that the Chicago Wolves will likely go independent and not have an NHL affiliate. And in the American Hockey League, that is a rare thing. It just doesn't happen. And listen, I've had some close ties with the Chicago Wolves the whole time I did the Power Play Post Show from 2004 to 2011. Had some very close ties. Billy Gardner, I still got his phone number in my cell phone. I could text him and talk to him about this, and there's a possibility that I will be talking to Billy Gardner about this situation, especially if it becomes more permanent in the future. But I have to say, they're affiliated with Carolina right now. The deal is up after this season, and they're just not happy. And what I love about the Chicago Wolves, and I will say this flat out, if you're not trying to win a championship for your fans, then you are doing a disservice to the people who are paying your bills. Yes, minor league hockey is about developing players and moving them up to the next level. And if you're at the AHL level, you're supposed to do that to get them to the NHL. But if you're still not trying to win a championship, then take the Calder Cup, crush it up into little bits and pieces, and throw it away. Teams need to win for their fans. Players, coaches, the staff should all be thinking about, yes, develop the player, get him up to the NHL, but we need to find a way to get the magic sauce to win a championship. And the Chicago Wolves think about that every single year. And if you have a problem with that, then don't be their fan. But I don't understand why someone would want to spend $20, $30, sometimes $50 a ticket per game to go watch a team lose or to develop players. It can be both, folks. There's a championship in the AHL, except for during COVID time, every single year. In the ECHL, every single year. Even the FPHL and the SPHL have been trying to do it. So good for the Wolves. I commend them. I know they don't want to do this, but they want to win for their fans, and their fans got to be thrilled about that. The Wolves did not make the playoffs and won the Calder Cup last season, so that means Carolina, how do you win a championship? You're with the Chicago Wolves. They'll put money towards getting players. They'll do all that kind of stuff. They will do anything to make those players happy, successful, and win a championship. That's what they want to do. And if you can't put a playoff team on the ice, Wolves will go somewhere else. So that's pretty much it for this week's opening segment. I want to get to my guest. I am very happy to finally have him on. I thought about this a lot, when I started up the Power Play Post Show. I was like, who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to start bringing in? I know I'm going to be talking about the FPHL when I talk about the Binghamton Black Bears, but I can do other things. I can tell the story of people within minor league hockey. I've done this for a long time. I've done over 1,000 interviews, and I can continue to do stuff like this. So I'm going to be reaching out to different people amongst the leagues and really kind of bring back the Power Play Post Show interview like only we know how to do it here on the Power Play Post Show. But I am very excited. I hope you guys enjoy the interview. It's a little long, but we had a lot to talk about and everything. He is the director of communications and broadcasting for the Adirondack Thunder. He's a Binghamton guy. We love him, and I know the fans love him. He was trained by Grady. Grady was trained by previous Roger Neal, and there's a connection. There's a lineage of broadcasters in Binghamton that kind of all link up together, and I'm very happy for his success and his continued success and my friendship with Rob. So coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show is Rob Lippolis. We'll be right back.
This is Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators.
Shot here at the face-off, they win! Ryan Keller, Crispin and home!
You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. I am very excited to have this gentleman on with me, and he's kind of from the Binghamton area. He's from Windsor, New York, and right now he's up in Glens Falls, and he is the main guy broadcasting all the games for the Adirondack Thunder. He is Binghamton very own Rob Lippolis. Rob, welcome to the show. You and I have had a relationship since 2011 when you started doing the intros and the extras for the Power Play Post Show, and you're just one of my favorite people in hockey, and I'm just glad to finally get you on the show.
I appreciate that. That's a long time ago. I hope I can remember back to those days, but it's great, and I'm glad you reached out.
Yeah, and what's interesting is all right. So I found this little website. It details you, and it's your little resume and everything, and on there, and it's what's great. It's got all your job experience and all that stuff, right? And I did find this. All you have to do is search Rob Lippolis, and you can find anything, right? Google's great like that and everything. But one of the things I thought was pretty great was when I went and looked, and I saw you actually have the little note on there about being kind of like our MC here on the Power Play Post Show. And I was like, oh, wow, look at that. And look at that old graphic he's got there with that. I was really surprised with that.
Bob, it's all about building your resume, right? So anytime that you can add something like that, no matter, I tell whenever someone might reach out about, hey, what can I do for to get into broadcasting, I say, do whatever you can. And, back when I first started, I loved the fact that I was able to do the intros and outros. I will say, though, I did listen to your podcast, and I sound like I'm about 10 years old. So we're gonna need to update those.
Yeah.
Because I was like, that's not me. I go, there's no way that's me.
Well, this summer, I think you'll probably come home for a little while to spend some time with the folks and everything. And I think we'll get a 12-pack or a 24-pack or whatever pack they make them nowadays, and we'll record some new stuff.
Works for me.
All right, perfect. So, well, here's the thing. So, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is really kind of, before we get to the Adirondack Thunder and the ECHL, and you guys got some big games coming up this weekend, obviously, especially against Worcester and everything, which is, I think, important for the playoffs. Can we talk a little bit about youth hockey here in Binghamton? Because, we just had the Black Bears here. They, Gino D'Angelo and MJ Merkel and a couple of the other guys, Dan Sokol, local guy, played for the team within the last couple of years. But talk a little bit about youth hockey. I think you and your brother both played as youth hockey players here in the area. And how important has the 50 years kind of influenced how strong that market is for youth hockey here in Binghamton?
Well, I think it's the first thing that blew my mind was not only was it, I believe, the 50th year, I know it's 50th year of pro hockey, but it's also the 50th year of SCHA.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge correlation where, I see I follow the SCHA on Facebook, all the social medias, and I see, they're releasing these old photos, and they're talking to, older players who used to be in. I think Eric Kelly was on there.
Yep.
And I think that's fascinating that both of them are at the same time. So when the Dusters came in, SCHA started right away. And there's been a lot of great players that have come through there. Obviously, Jerry D'Amigo, Mike Dunham. I'd probably go, Mike Dunham, Jerry D'Amigo, 1-2 there that have come out of Binghamton. But I think it's a huge thing. And, every intermission, I remember growing up, going to Binghamton Rangers games, skating at the intermission. I think every kid sees that and goes through that, and you're skating out there as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, and you're looking up and there's 3,000 people in the seats as a young kid, and it's just something that I think is a great tie with the community. And I know the Black Bears, I think a huge thing with the Black Bears coming into town was the free youth hockey tickets. It's a great initiative. Get the kids out, get them to games, enjoy it, hang out with the players, meet the players. Players go to skates, practices. I think it's a great thing, and they should keep it going.
Was it important for you and your brother, to be a part of those kind of hockey moments in your youth? Because I know I'm pretty sure you and your brother both played for BCC.
Yeah, we went to Windsor. So Windsor obviously did not have a hockey team.
No.
And the high school hockey has a draft. And if you are wanting to play high school hockey, but you don't go to a high school that has a team, you go into a draft. So I got drafted, I don't know, probably dead last by Maine Endwell. And so then once I was there, when my brother came up, it's almost like a grandfather.
Yeah.
I think it was, where he could go to that if there was a relative there, he could go to that. So, but yeah, we both played there. My dad played at Maine Endwell. My dad played at BCC, and then me and my brother both played at BCC. And I think, when you're a kid, you're skating at intermissions, you're doing all that, you take it for granted. But then when I'm looking at, when I was up in the press box, looking at center ice and see all the kids skating around, like, oh man, I wonder what they're thinking. And I was like, I probably didn't think anything of it at the time. But I think it's really cool, and it's a nice little time.
What's really amazing is I've obviously spent a lot of time in the press box in Binghamton as well, and I'm looking down, watching the Mighty Mites play and everything, and I was thinking to myself, wow, this happens every year after year after year. Young kids are playing youth hockey here in Binghamton, which is great. I know when I talked to Gino D'Angelo last week about this same type of topic, he remembered, being a Mighty Mite out there for the BC Icemen. It didn't really matter what level of hockey or what team was here, what affiliation was here. There's always been just a lot of youth hockey in Binghamton, and I think it's really kept the culture going. Like, if you got a kid playing hockey, you're probably also going to the pro game as well afterwards. So, how much did you and your family go to the pro games?
We went a lot. Probably my earliest memories of going to Binghamton were Rangers games.
Okay.
I remember I just going to the arena. The Rangers were there, and what was I'm trying to think. It was what was Peter and what were the last name?
Peter and Chris Ferraro.
Yes, Ferraros. Those were the guys back when I was growing up. Those were the two main guys, and just being able, I think, as a kid to go to a game when they're wearing a Rangers jersey, and then at youth hockey wearing the same jersey, I think it's a very meaningful thing. And I know the Senators did that. I know the Icemen. I was on the junior Icemen. So every team that's been in there, you wear that jersey, and then you're like, oh, I have that same jersey.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great connection. And I know the Black Bears, I think, are doing a great job with youth hockey, and I'll go back to the initiative to get free tickets. I think when I was a kid, I'm pretty sure my parents had to buy tickets for me, and now the Black Bears get to give tickets and all youth hockey, whether you're a first year trying to learn hockey. And I think that's huge, where if you're a first year kid playing hockey, and you get a free ticket, that helps out the youth hockey as well.
It
where,
does.
Hey, give youth hockey a try. Give us a try. You get a free season ticket to a Black Bears game. And I think that was a whole part of the plan, where we want to help boost youth hockey. We want to make it bigger. We want more kids getting involved with it. And what better way than, hey, give hockey a try, and here's this ticket to every single home game this season. I think it's a great thing that they've done.
I think I could spin it another way. It's a smart business decision as well, right? Because maybe like a 7 or 8 or a 9-year-old kid gets a free ticket because he's doing the early years of youth hockey and everything, but his parents got to buy a ticket. So in one sense, you are doing something that's actually really awesome. And I think the initiative was very phenomenal. But at the same time, it's a great business decision because a parent's just not going to drop off their kid and go, okay, enjoy the game. They're going to go buy a ticket and go with their kid to the game. So in one sense, great initiative, phenomenal initiative. I don't see anything bad about it, but it's also a smart business decision as well.
Yeah, and it's the way I somewhat look at it is I think, maybe those kids and the parents are going anyway, right? But this is just something to help out, right, a little bit. In terms of, you're getting your child into hockey. How much does it, equipment? That's not cheap. All this. So you know what? If you could save $15 a game by being able to bring your child who's playing youth hockey for free, I think that's huge and creates a relationship. It creates a friendship, and I think that's really what the initiative is about with the Black Bears. Was we know that all these kids are coming to games. They're going to skate intermissions, but we're trying to help out more, and we want to be a part of the community, and we're a community team, and I think they've done a good job of that.
No, I totally agree with you. Okay, so why broadcasting? What was it that appealed to you about going into broadcasting? And I don't say it was the charm of Grady Wittenberg. I'm just kind of curious, was that something that you were always interested in, broadcasting?
Well, Bob, I wasn't too great at hockey. So if I wanted to do things in hockey, I had to change it up a little bit, right? Shake it up. So,
right.
No, it was, I started doing travel, and then went to just high school, and there was I think it was a AA, AAA team, with the Senators. That was, there was a traveling team. So we were able to do high school and that travel team at the same time. And I was fascinated by, watching games, and I love the thrill of like a good goal call in the playoffs, overtime. So I started doing, my parents got me this called a radio DJ. And I was, I might have been, I'm going to say freshman in high school. I'm just going to, around that age. And what this thing did was it allowed you to, within 20 feet, connect to like a small FM channel on a radio. And I would sit in my room or basement, whatever, and watch a game, and then I would tune in all the radios in my house. And that might have been why I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, but I loved it. It was, but it was crazy. It was, and I think I still have that thing. I think my parents still have that at my house. But I would do the play-by-play. I would watch the TV, do the play-by-play, and then my parents would have the radio on upstairs or something with the TV muted, and I would be doing it. And I remember, I think I was a sophomore in high school. My dad ran into Tom Mitchell and mentioned, that I liked doing broadcasting, and I think Tom gave my dad Grady's email, and I sent him an email just out of the blue, and Grady responded. We talked, and I started doing an internship. He was either a sophomore or junior in high school. And it started off real small, just printing, just your classic internship.
Sure.
And it turned into, I was helping him get interviews after the game. Down in the locker room, there's a second pair of headsets in the other end of the home locker room facing the Zamboni entrance that they had rigged down there that went up to the press box. So I would have to go down there and get it. And then I remember he had a tape deck recorder, and I know all the young kids will have no clue what I'm talking about, but a tape deck recorder, it was almost like a floppy disk CD, right? That
Yeah.
you'd have to take in and out of this thing for each highlight that you had. And he's like, Grady said, I think you'd learn better if you started doing the real thing, which was probably the best piece of advice that I had ever received. And that's the advice that I give to everyone nowadays. You can only learn so much in books, in the classroom.
It's true.
When it comes to play-by-play, it's reps. You have to do it. You have to keep doing it. You have to learn different words for different situations, and that's how you get better. So, Grady, I did this practice broadcast. It was my first one ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to remember, I think there was a guy, was it something St. Pierre on the Senators?
Martin St. Pierre.
Yes, that was it. He scored a goal. I remember it to this day. He scored a goal from the hash marks, and it was my first ever goal call, like practice goal call.
Right.
And you would have thought that it was Game 7. This is, regular season, first goal of the game, 5 minutes in the game. You would have thought it was Game 7, Stanley Cup. I lose my mind. And so then we go, a couple days later, Grady has me come into his office. He's like, all right, let's take a listen to your tape. And here I am shrieking at the top of my lungs as a high school kid, high-pitched voice. And he starts laughing. And I was devastated. Like, at first, I'm like, oh, my God, I need to get a new profession. I'm done. This is it. I'm a failure. But he's like, yep, I've been here. He goes, I know exactly how you feel with that. And it was an awesome learning experience. And he was amazing. He taught me everything I know. And I'm so happy to see that he's still getting to do NHL games, and being up with Cornell. He's everything that I have right now is because of him. So he's a great friend, great mentor, and I try to do the same for everyone that he did for me.
What's funny, Rob, is the first episode of the Power Play Post Show was me and Grady just basically doing a 40-minute thing about the Binghamton Senators and the East Division back in 2004. And what's amazing about it, he did 76 straight more episodes with me and the other people that I brought into the show and everything, just to kind of expand the show and make it bigger. And eventually we start talking about the whole American Hockey League. And he came back and he was a part of every single season that I did the show for the first 11 years and whatnot. He gave back because when he got into it, someone said, all right, here's a tape recorder, go up into this corner and kind of call the game yourself. And then they talked to him about it. He did for you what somebody did for him. And, my show didn't have credibility without Grady Wittenberg to start first. And so I get it.
Yeah, and it's a small community.
It is.
It's fun. It's amazing. And what he did, I try to help out anyone I can in any way, shape, or form. And it's all because of what he did. If he wasn't there, I don't know what I'd be doing. If he never answered the email, if I never sent the email, I don't know what I'd be doing. But, the best piece of advice that he ever gave me was, hey, instead of printing game notes and anyone can read scores on intermissions,
mm-hmm.
That was when he stuck me up not stuck me up, that's the wrong word, but we went up to the loft, the light loft.
Yeah.
And he used to call me Lipper, and
yep.
he called it Lipper's Loft. And that was where that all came from. And I would literally just show up for games. At that point, I wasn't an intern, I don't think. I showed up. I went up to that loft. I set my laptop up. I had my little mixer that my parents bought me and my little headset. And I sat there with 2 chairs, a power source, and I hung a microphone up from the catwalk. And that was the start. And that's all I did.
It's crazy.
And so I don't consider myself an intern. He allowed me to go there and practice and do it and get the reps in. And if I didn't have that, that was before I went to college. If I didn't have that, there'd probably no chance that I'd be broadcasting right now, because you have to do it to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just learn it in the classroom.
It's true. Talk to me a little bit about the NAHL and the USHL. Obviously, you were in Corpus Christi, and then obviously in Omaha with the Lancers in the USHL. Talk a little bit about those 2 leagues, and especially for fans who don't know, because some of us really kind of live in our own tunnel where I just watch NHL or I just watch AHL or talk to us a little bit about those 2 leagues and why they're important.
Unbelievable. So I graduated from Oswego in 2011, and I worked at Belden Hill Golf Course from, I think, like 06 to whenever I got this job. Loved it. I'm a big golf guy, so it was great. I'm outside mowing, whatever.
It's a beautiful course.
Fantastic.
Beautiful course. I love that course.
Great. It's great. I like to tell people that I had a lot to do with it, but that's a different story. So, but I remember I was mowing, and this is how, when I mentioned earlier, broadcasting is a small world. I was applying for jobs everywhere, and that was when the CHL was still around.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, Corpus Christi used to be CHL, but they got out and they went to NAHL. And Grady had met a guy named Pat Dunn, who was the GM of the Corpus Christi Ice Raids. He was the GM of them when they were CHL, when it was pro, and then they switched to junior and he stayed. But at one point, he was in Norfolk with the Admirals. And Grady had met him there. And when I applied for the job, I asked Grady if he knew anyone down there. He saw that Pat Dunn was there. He sent Dunner a message, and Grady got me my first job. And that was, I was mowing the 4th hole at Belden Hill Golf Course when my phone rang. And I accepted the job while mowing a fairway. And within a week, I had to move down there. It was September. It was late. So I just packed up. I had a 2-door Saturn. I packed it up with everything, and I drove down. But the NAHL and USHL is a remarkable league. The first game, or the second game, we played the Odessa Jackalopes. So it was down in Corpus Christi. It's right on the water. And it's a remarkable arena. And I'm 21 years old. I'm like, there's 7,000 people at this junior game that I'm broadcasting. And the goaltending matchup all year between Corpus Christi and Odessa was Connor Hellebuck versus Anthony Stolarz in net. And those, like Hellebuck and Stolarz, they've had unbelievable careers. And I'm 21. I'm watching these 16, 17-year-olds. Yep. And little do you know that they're going to be stars. Yeah. And it's awesome. They're 2 great leagues. They pump out Division I talent, pro talent. And it's a great starter for a broadcaster too. There's a lot of guys who might reach out and say, what do you think about this job? In this, what's this league like? And the best thing I can ever tell them is, this league allows you to make mistakes that other leagues won't. Because you're learning, you have typos. Maybe you say something on the broadcast. Maybe you say something on social media. It's these leagues, when you're learning, allows you to make mistakes and learn for yourself, where if you're in the ECHL, AHL, NHL, that wouldn't fly. And that's, I made a ton of those mistakes. I mean, typos, my graphics were awful, my videos were awful. Like, I was learning on the fly, and it's an amazing league, not only for the players, because you think, hey, the players get to make mistakes in this league, but it's also the staff, too. It's a lot of the staff in those leagues, maybe younger, just starting up, and those leagues allow that to happen.
It's interesting. Let's jump forward to 2020. Everybody was kind of like the whole world changed when obviously COVID hit and things just kind of went kind of bonkers there. And, you know, obviously the Binghamton Devils played their final season, you know, in New Jersey, didn't play here. And one of the things that I noticed, and maybe this is the progression of your abilities, was the ability to do things remote, to be able to use Zoom and to interview the coach, and you know the YouTube channels probably even got bigger and stronger and better. I mean, and content creators were like doing things from home in front of a camera, you know, with a microphone and things of that nature, a lot more. But it also changed, you know, how sports broadcasters and even talk show hosts, you know, they started doing things from home. How did COVID, I know in the sense that COVID kind of affected, you know, Binghamton hockey, you know, eventually the Devils left, and you don't need to comment about that part, but how did that year kind of really affect you as a broadcaster?
Well, that's a tough one. It was,
yeah.
I mean, you were there in Binghamton, and it was, the Devils were on a heater at the end of this. I mean, we're somewhat on a run like that right now in Adirondack, which I know you get to later, but the turnaround from like worst to in a playoff spot was insane for the Devils that year. They couldn't lose. And it was weird as a broadcaster. I've been broadcasting since 2011. I think I've done, let's see, 3, 6, I think 9 playoff games ever since then, since 2011. With the Black Bears last year against Danbury. And then the previous one would have been in Omaha, Nebraska in the USHL in 14, 15 was the last time. So to be on a run like that, it was, you know, and the Devils, I think, you know, well, they struggled the first every year until the second half, that Christmas, when they won, it was 8 in a row, and they couldn't lose. It was weird. It was, as a broadcaster, you'd go into a game and you're like, how much are we going to win by?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, we were in Rochester. It was a Wednesday night, and that was when the ACC basketball tournament, or there was an NBA game, actually, that a player tested positive, and then they shut the game down. Then, like, the ACC basketball tournament stopped, and then it was during, like, I'm broadcasting the game. I'm seeing all this stuff about all these tournaments, games being stopped, and we beat Rochester maybe 6-1, 5-1, and then we had to go to Laval after the game.
Yeah.
So we get on the bus, and I'm like, what's happening? Are we going to play? We get on the bus, we go up to Laval. We get over the border, everything. We get to Laval, and we couldn't go into the arena. Like, we had to keep everything on the bus and stay at the hotel. And then the next day was when the season stopped. And then we had to get back on the bus in Laval and try to get back over the border. And the line at the border was insane. No one knew what was going on, right? And then we were wondering, is there going to be a season? Is there going to be a season? No, that season stopped. So then comes around full circle. is there going to be a season? Is it going to be in Binghamton? What's happening? We don't know. And then I got a call to go down to New Jersey, and I basically, I'd gone through some personal stuff prior to that, and I was like, it's a good opportunity. This is, I can get out and go down there for 4 or 5 months. And so I did that and lived in a hotel in West Orange, New Jersey from probably early mid-January until mid-late May. And it was great for me. It was just to get out and be able to do that. But it was, the media part of it was, you had to learn on the fly. No one knew what, Zoom. I didn't know what Zoom was. So to have to interview a coach pregame on Zoom and then postgame on Zoom was something that everyone was learning. It was so different. Having to go into arenas and get your temperature taken and get a wristband and have to wear, I had to wear a mask until you went on the air, and then it was just a surreal experience. But it was, everyone powered through it, and I think everyone adapted well to that. But it was something that was, you don't learn that in school, right? You got to learn it on the fly, and it was something that I think everyone was trying to get used to and did, and we got through it.
I want to talk about the Adirondack Thunder, but first, the first game back for the first game back in Binghamton, the Binghamton Black Bears, first home game, sellout crowd, pretty exciting. What were your thoughts of that game up in the broadcast booth, just looking down, seeing all those fans? I know it's, when you become a broadcaster, you probably thought, there's 2 things I want to check off my bucket list. I want to call an NHL game, which you now have done and everything, and congratulations. I love the fact that you were able to do that, fulfill that dream. But at the same time, just like myself, when I got into the broadcasting, the podcasting, whatever you want to call it and everything, doing the radio show and everything, one of the things I wanted to do was sit up in that press box in a couple different fashions. I wanted to be a color commentator. I was able to do that with Ken Kale and Grady, and it was a lot of fun and everything. But for you to be able to go up there, I know you did it with the Devils, but that Black Bears first game back, talk about that for a second.
It was different. It was, I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. And I know, everyone, when it was announced that the Black Bears were coming, there was a lot of negativity.
Sure.
And I would say that on that first game, when I forget the number off the top of my head, but it was something, I think, in the 600s of how many days it was in between hockey games in Binghamton.
I think it was March 25th of 2020 until that first game. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it was for days from the last game that was played to the home opener for the Black Bears. It was an astronomical number. One that didn't seem believable when I looked it up, actually. And to go into that game, and it was jammed. I mean, we had to delay the game because there were so many people trying to get in. And the lights went off, and everyone's chanting, "Let's go Black Bears." I'll never forget it. And I've watched a lot of games, but that was something that it was the Black Bears. It was an amazing game, and they hung on, and a little fisticuffs at the end after, but it was they hung on, and it was an amazing night. And I'll be honest, I didn't see it coming. I was shocked, and it was a fantastic night, and they've kept it going ever since then. But to see the crowd, it was a different type crowd, right? It was it was it had a different feel.
Energy.
If that makes sense.
There was an energy in that crowd.
Yeah, there was, and it was really cool. It was something I won't forget.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're very proud, and I'm sure Andreas and the team and what you guys accomplished that first night, everybody was very proud of, and again, they've done very, very well. Before I have to let you go and everything, let's talk a little bit about Adirondack. Let's talk about the ECHL. When I sat down and, I was like, what am I going to talk to Rob about? I was like, all right, well, let me look at the standings first. Let me look at the schedule, the remaining. I know we're going into the final weekend for the ECHL. And I'm like, oh, okay. They're a point behind right now of the Worcester Rattlers, and they have 3 games left. And, 2 of those games are against the Rattlers and everything. And the Friday night game is against the Lions, and that's an important game because you don't want to overthink. You don't want to look past the Lions getting obviously to the Railers. But it's one of those things where you got 2 games against the Railers, and they've only got 2 games left, and it's against you guys. So you guys can do yourselves a favor by winning against the Lions. Talk about this weekend. This is going to be a big weekend for Adirondack.
Well, Bob, if you were to ask me in, let's say, I'm going to say February,
right, that
we would have a chance at the playoffs right now, I would have probably called you a liar. Yeah, we started off. We played Worcester. Adirondack played Worcester. 8-9 times in the first 4 weeks of the season, and Worcester set a record for wins to start a season before a loss, and we played them for all of those.
Oh, wow.
So we were in dead last with Norfolk to start the season, and then our head coach Pete McCarthy, we got an unbelievable staff. It's the most fun staff, the best staff I've been around, and they just kept trying to make moves, just little moves here and there. Just we're going to keep grinding, and we went to Florida, and we had a game on a Thursday in Orlando. This was in March, and then we had a game Friday, Saturday in Jacksonville. And the thing that people don't know about ECHL is that the travel is much more insane than a lot of East Coast teams in the AHL was. We go different places a lot. Like not just, it was Syracuse who was in division. These teams travel out of division in this league a lot. So we started to go on, and I joked, I'm like, this is a Binghamton Devils type heater that we're on right now.
Right.
And it's true. We were, 20 so points out of a playoff spot. There was no even thought of being in the playoffs. And then we went 9-0, 2-1. And just like that, we then played Worcester a Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And we won all 3 games against Worcester. And the deficit went from 12 to single digits. It was close. And then we're like, oh, well, we might, we'll see what happens. And then they kept winning and scrounging out points. One of the big games that I remember is we were up in Newfoundland, which I remember talking to Grady about it, actually. I'm like, hey, we're going up to Newfoundland. You got any suggestions? And gave me a bunch of spots for food and whatnot. And it's a great spot. It's far away. And I didn't know that a place could exist that was an hour and a half ahead of Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
But Newfoundland is it.
Well, let me ask you, before you finish that, how was the plane ride in?
Well, we had to drive up.
Mm-hmm.
We drive up. We go over the border on the bus
to
avoid going through customs at the airport. It's much easier. So we drive up to Montreal, and then because of how much equipment we have, and there's limited flights to Newfoundland, we had to go to Montreal because we had 40-plus bags of equipment, my stuff, training, equipment manager, all that. Then we flew from Montreal to Toronto, which now is further away from Newfoundland, and then from Toronto to Newfoundland.
That's crazy.
That's the flight that we went on.
But the landing into Newfoundland, was that okay? Because I've heard stories from many AHL broadcasters that said they were white knuckling it going into Newfoundland.
Well, Bob, there was so much fog I couldn't see the runway until the last second.
That's
so I
not
just dealt with it.
That's not good. That's not good. That's not good at all. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
You think you're 3,000 feet up and you're 5 feet above the runway. So,
all right, continue your story.
Yeah, it was. It's a wild trip up there, but we're right now going into the weekend. We were at one point, very recently, 1 point above Worcester for the fourth and final spot. 4 teams in the division make the playoffs. So now going into the final weekend, we are 1 point behind Worcester.
Yep.
We've eliminated that deficit. And we play in Trois-Rivières, which for NHL, AHL fans, it's about an hour and a half north of Montreal. So it's near Laval, hour and a half north. So they have their NHL, AHL, ECHL team within a 2-hour span of one another.
That's great.
Yep. And then, so we play there Friday. We have a game in hand. So Worcester is off Friday, and then we host Worcester Saturday and Sunday. And it's going to come down. Nothing can be decided Friday. We can only help ourselves Friday. But it's going to come down to Saturday or Sunday at home for the playoffs. And
awesome.
I've never, when I was getting up through the ranks, I've never had bigger games to call than this weekend. And I have no effect on the games. It's just I'm the broadcaster, but it's fun to go into a game of such meaning. I can't imagine what it's like to do a finals or a conference finals. I'm talking regular season, and I'm jacked up for them. But it's the game. If we win Friday in Trois-Rivières, we're 1 point ahead of Worcester. We have the tiebreaker. The tiebreaker is regulation wins. And we have that by 1 game right now.
Wow.
So there's a lot of math. I'm terrible at math, but it's nothing can be decided Friday. The earliest something can be decided is on Saturday. But it's fun to be a part of. It's a heck of a turnaround because in December, January, February even, if you asked me what I was doing next weekend, I would have said I'm probably home, to be honest. I'm probably visiting friends, but the plans have been shut down for right now for a good reason.
I solicited a couple questions from fans on Facebook, and one of them, Roy Chambers, asked this question about Travis Broman. He came up from the SPHL to come up and play with you guys, and from what I can see so far, he's played about 45 games with you guys, 12 goals, 21 assists for 33 points and everything. Can you talk a little bit about his play, but also at the same point, the SPHL or the FPHL sometimes provides some help to the ECHL and everything. It's an important part of that. And obviously Travis started with the SPHL and has now moved up to the ECHL.
The best part about that story, Bob, is Travis Broman went to Oswego. He was the captain of Oswego State. And I was a broadcast. I held broadcast. I split it it was a student station. But he came in, when we were at the toughest of times. And he came in, he's been one of our best guys. He's got an unbelievable handlebar mustache going as well, I will say. But a lot of our guys, Grant and Josephek, and it's funny, I remember talking to Grant. I'm like, I remember you when you were on the Lincoln Stars. I was in Omaha. There were huge rivals in the USHL. And I remember him on that team. And he was on Worcester last year and went to camp, I think, with the Savannah Ghost Pirates, the new team this year.
Right.
And got released. And he was sitting home. And we were up in Trois-Rivières early on. And we had a lot of injuries. And we needed help. And he drove up from Chester, New Jersey, from his house. He drove up to Quebec in his car, played, got in maybe at 4 a.m., played that night, and he's got 40-plus points in 50 games. I mean, he's one of our best players.
Yeah.
And the thing that I love about that is you never know when you're going to get your shot. I don't want to compare it, but, I didn't know when I would get my shot. But these players, they get called up, and you might have one game to make an impression. You might have 2 games to make an impression. And we've had several guys this season who come up from the SP or just not even playing and just come right in and made a direct impact on the team.
We have another question from Kara K on Facebook. She wants to know, what was your most memorable game that you played and or favorite game to announce? So it's a 2-part question.
I'm going to go with the announce part. I got a lot of participation trophies, Bob, when I played. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go with the announced part. I think my favorite game I ever announced in Binghamton, and I don't know if you remember this one, it was the one that when Binghamton was on the run right before COVID,
mm-hmm.
They were down 3-0 at home to Syracuse on a Sunday after one period.
Oh, yeah.
And they came back. I think it was Nick Merkley tied the game late, possibly with under a minute to go, and then Brandon Gignac scored in a shootout, and that extended the win streak to 8 games. And that was probably the most electric Sunday crowd I had ever been a part of in Binghamton, and that was probably the best game that I remember broadcasting in my life, other than doing the games for New Jersey.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you before we ended this interview about the Binghamton Senators winning the Calder Cup in 2011. I'd worked really hard, with the show and doing a lot of things, and was able to sit there, be a part of Fox 40's coverage of the finals and everything. And one of my greatest memories is just sitting there thinking, I've been watching hockey in Binghamton for this long, and now I'm sitting in a TV studio about to go on the air to have to talk about this. And I felt like this is one of the greatest moments of my life and everything. What was the experience of the B-Sens winning the Calder Cup for you as a local hockey fan, a local hockey, youth player, that type of thing? What did that championship mean to you?
It was funny because I remember during that season was when I believe it was Fox 40 or WBPN would do the games, some of them, on the TV, and Grady actually, I did the radio feed that year for those 3 or 4 WBPN 8 games, and Grady would run a line from the press box to that loft that I had done the practice games in, and I broadcasted the game on the radio from that exact loft. But it was that year, it was the Calder Cup year. But again, it was just like I talked about. The Senators weren't great to start the year, right? It was a wild run.
Yeah.
Second half of the year, they just squeaked in. and they had to go play the opposite division because they were the fifth place team or whatever, and the rule was if your points were higher than the fourth place team in the other division, you were in that division. So that's when they had to play. I think it was Manchester.
Yep.
Was it Portland, I believe, too?
Charlotte.
But it was
Yep.
And the Charlotte one, and I was a senior in college at that time.
With Oswego. Yep.
Yep. And so I wasn't really an intern there anymore. So I remember I would listen to the games going through, and I'll never forget listening to the game when Leonard stopped the
penalty
shot
Yep.
in overtime. And it's amazing. It's remarkable that the season came down to that. Like, if that goes in, that's it.
Yeah, it's over.
And then he continued that off a penalty shot in overtime. That's how close it came. And then they just, the story is the rest. But I'll never forget, I actually went to those games as a fan. We bought the package, and we sat at the top of 27. And I remember we went to Dillinger's outside prior to the game. It was nice out in June.
Beautiful day.
I'll never forget, a bus pulled up in front of Dillinger's. And off the bus came, there were two buses. It must have been 200 Ottawa Senate people from Ottawa.
Yeah.
They had come down, and I don't know if you remember that, the section that was behind the net with all the Ottawa fans.
Oh yeah,
had the horse helmet on, and they came in. They raided. They came in and raided Dillinger's, and I'm like, this is going to be insane. And I'll never forget walking in, and before the lights could even turn on, it was "We Want the Cup," and I never heard that. I will say, I know you have. I've been to a lot of arenas.
Yes.
Sporting events. That building in those 3 games was potentially one of the loudest places I've ever been in.
It was electricity that I don't think we've ever seen in Binghamton, and I know at least not since the the first 5 years of the Dusters. They probably hadn't seen that kind of electricity in that building. It was easily one of my. I mean, other than 1994 when the New York Rangers won the Stanley Cup. Sporting-wise, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I don't see much there ever anymore. I'm a New York Yankees fan, just, being born and raised in New York. I'm going to eventually be a New York fan of some sort, right? But the 94 Stanley Cup New York Rangers and the Binghamton Senators AHL Cup championship, those two things, the feeling that I had, because the New York Rangers have only been close once since then in 2015 against the LA Kings, where both teams went 7 rounds for every single series, and it was crazy. And the disappointment that so that's why you relish the 94, the 2011, at least in my for me. So totally agree.
So it was. I mean, it was, and the parade, everything about that was awesome. And I'm glad I got to witness it. It was just phenomenal, and it's hard to explain to people who weren't there or who don't know Binghamton of how loud it was. Like you go to a Friday Saturday game and there's a goal and maybe half the crowd stands up, right, and cheers. But when this happened, and I was at, because college was I had to graduate first. And so I was still in college during the Charlotte series. The first game I got to go to was the clincher, the overtime, Jim O'Brien.
Yeah.
And I was there for that. And I was like, this is going to be insane, the finals. And I remember telling my dad, I'm like, he's like, well, you want to be an intern for this? Like, what, you going to see if they want? I'm like, you know what? I go, nope. I go, let's buy the package right now, because I would like to watch this as a fan who's been going to games forever. And we did, and it was well worth it. That was just unbelievable stuff. I remember after the first game, they had that question, the goal that was a little bit questionable, and the fans were throwing trash on the ice, and then they come back in the second, and then win it, and they had gone back there with a chance. And I'll never forget, Shines, everyone after that final game before they went back, that you knew that they weren't coming back. Right, there was not going to be another game played in Binghamton.
Yeah,
because they had to go back to Houston, and just the let's hear it for your Sens just kept doing it. Wild night, and I also remember now that the video boards were in the corners.
Yes,
which is something different, right? It was you had to look in the corner for the replay for the video there. It was great.
I can tell you from calling the Manchester series with the Manchester Monarchs and Ken Kale, who's one of my greatest friends in broadcasting and just in the American Hockey League family and everything. I remember at the end of the game before they went back up to Manchester, and I told the Manchester fans, I said, listen, the series is yours. I was never so happy to be wrong in my life. I got to be honest with you. And I became very close with the LA Kings, the Manchester Monarchs, their fans, just because of the amount of work that I did with them over the next 3 or 4 years. And it pained me to say that about a Binghamton team that I was calling a game against, but I was so happy to be wrong. I got to be honest with you. It was probably the happiest moment of my life when we won that series and moved on, because it seemed like Portland gave us a little bit of a hiccup. Charlotte, we swept them, which was unexpected completely. They had one of the best goaltenders all year long going through the American Hockey League. And then we get to Houston, and it was just a great series. Rob, thank you very much for coming on. I totally, really, really appreciate it. It was a pleasure to just sit down and talk through some of these things with you and hear some of these stories. And, best of luck to the Adirondack Thunder this weekend. I know that you guys are in a good position to make the playoffs, but obviously the game still has to be played.
We're in a better position than we were 2 months ago, Bob. That's how you got to look at it. You got to look at it that way. But it was awesome to come on and chat. And, I know you got my number. I'm here anytime you want to chat.
Awesome. He is Rob Lippolis, Director of Communications and Broadcasting for the Adirondack Thunder, and we'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week from the Box Studios Radio Network to keep up to date with the latest news, scores, and interviews by visiting www.PPPShow.net. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.